A god walking mortal earth trails blood.
Hello, and welcome to the Legendary Green Team's Malazan series. Welcome to episode 3 of the Deadhouse Gates series. If you haven't listened to our previous episodes, go back and listen, and then come back. I am Hurinfan, and I am joined today by BefuddledPanda.
Hello.
JasnahAsABoy.
Hi, everyone.
And Ashaman.
Hi.
As a reminder, this is BefuddledPanda's first time reading Deadhouse Gates. Jasnah has read Deadhouse Gates previously and is reading the series for the first time, and Ashaman and myself are Malazan veterans. Today, we are covering Deadhouse Gates chapters 12 through 19. If you haven't read these chapters, please stop listening here, as everything in these chapters is fair game for discussion, so spoilers galore. If you haven't read the chapters and wish to continue listening, note there is content warning for violence. As we go chapter by chapter, we will discuss the following. What characters and scenes stood out to you? Any favorite lines from the chapter? Any questions or speculations in the chapter to bring up with the group? So, this week, Ashaman is going to read our summaries because he wrote them.
Woohoo.
Going to take it for chapter 12?
Absolutely. The chain of dogs are in their worst condition yet, with the tribal war leader all too good at raiding them where it hurts most. Duiker is forced to participate in an excursion attempting to kill said war leader, only to find out he's been possessed by a corrupted earth spirit. Felison and co. make it to the shelter of a buried city with a tragic past. Kalam learns Manala's backstory as they continue their journey through the Imperial Warren. Pearl and Lostara make a short detour to aid in the aforementioned raid.
All right, so let's start with first one. Any scenes or characters that stood out? Panda, you want to take it first?
Sure, I can. So there are two characters that I really enjoyed, but one of them I did not get enough of. So the first one is Haboric and his ghost hands. I love the part where he boosts Culp up to get through the hole in the ceiling, and it's actually kind of it's funny, but at the same time you're also like, because Felison just like went through all this pain to climb up this pillar, and this whole entire time Haboric could have just helped give her a boost. She wouldn't have to bleed. And then the second character is Apt, when Apt came from the Warren and saved Pearl and Lestera. And I did not get enough out of Apt.
I like Apt a lot.
Yeah.
Apt just is saving everyone left and right in this book.
I know.
No thanks needed. She just does it.
She's a good mother.
Mm-hmm.
She is.
Ash, how about you? Any scenes or characters?
I really liked the bit where they were exploring the city. Felison and Haboric and Culp. You get a really good sense of... Well, okay, there's a lot of exploring ancient cities and ancient battlegrounds in this book. And this one was my second favorite of their cities, because it gives you some interesting backstory on the Soul-Taken divers, as well as just like a sad occurrence that had happened millennia past. And it's kind of spooky how Vor can just, tell everyone all this stuff, which, it's not
Stuff
really
he shouldn't know.
Yeah, stuff he shouldn't know. How is he doing this?
Mm.
A lot of lore. A lot of lore.
I think this is the first incident of shapeshifters in the world, but I'm not sure.
Jasnah?
I really liked how it bookended the chapter with the same fight scene from two different perspectives, and you get Duiker's perspective on the fight scene, not knowing what happens with Lestara, Yell, and
Pearl.
And Pearl, even though it's like hinted at, and that the mission seems more of a total failure in the first viewpoint, and then in the second viewpoint, you find out that the Semp god, or whatever, the fragment of the Semp god, is like severely weakened by the interference of Apt.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing with the Semp god is still confusing to me. Like I
Mhm.
get it because I've read it a few times, but yeah, it's not clear.
Well, I had the question to Ash when he wrote the summary. I was like, wait, the Semk ascendant was an earth spirit? But then Ash, you clarified that not quite.
Yeah. So basically, when the Earth spirits were eating the Semp god, there was a part of it that was so malevolent that, when consumed, corrupted the Earth spirit entirely and made it go crazy. Which is how the raids were so effective, because they were using the Earth spirits to detect when raids were happening and stuff. But the Earth spirits didn't know that one of their own was the source of this. So
And then the earth spirit was the one that possessed the war leader, which
yeah,
I also didn't quite understand the whole possession.
I don't exactly know why it possessed the guy. I think it's just like a leftover habit of the Semp god, because it did that to its worshippers.
Oh, I
when
see.
yeah. And like, what a horrifying image too, of having just like this guy, his entire body has been sewn shut.
Yep, all the orifices.
Mm-hmm.
Can't let it out. So I really liked two parts. I liked we learned about Talk the Younger, learning with Duiker, and he's like a little snot nosed little kid who ended up teaching Duiker. It was a little nice nod. And then I liked the part with Kalam, and he learned about Minala's past, and he learned that he and Minala are quite a bit alike, and how they both define themselves by how they protect other people. And then Kalam learning about her former husband, and he's like, "Hey, Hood, if you want to spit him back out,
Kill him
I'll
again.
I'll do some. I won't make his death very quick."
Mm-hmm. That was sweet.
How romantic, eh?
I mean, it's the tension between Manala and Kalam is much more believable for me.
Then some of the romance in book one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There were a few decent romances I felt in this part. The most notable one, in my opinion, being the Dewicker and Kalam, Dewicker and not Kalam, the
Oh,
named
the
Marine.
Marine. Yeah,
I liked her. I'm gonna
Uh,
ride you, old man.
until you beg.
that's what
Yes.
you want to hear in the middle of a battle.
So should we go into quotes? Because I think all of us probably have the same one.
Probably.
I have many.
So in a conversation between Lowell and Duiker, I really like Captain Lowell in these chapters, by the way. But Lowell said, "Children are dying." Lowell nodded. That's a succinct summary of humankind, I'd say. Who needs tomes and volumes of history? Children are dying. The injustices of the world hide in those three words. Quote me, Duiker, and your work's done. That's kind of what this book is about, right?
Yes.
This is probably, I think, the second most quoted line from the series.
Oh,
Would you agree with
wow.
that, Ash?
I would say either it's the if it's not the second, it's the first.
I can see why it's so quoted. It's very impactful. It's succinct at itself. It is succinct. Yeah, and it really does like hit home.
Yasmin, you want to give us a quote or two?
Sure. So, this is the sappers talking after the fight scene in the camp, the enemy camp. Sarge took an arrow, said the other sapper. His lungs bleeding. Just one of them, and it's a pinprick, the sergeant corrected, pausing to spit. The other one's fine. Can't breathe blood, Sarge. I shared a tent with you, lad. I've breathed worse. Right from children are dying to
Sleight of hand.
sapper jokes. Yeah.
Ash, do you have some?
Yes. Okay. from a discussion with Nil. The Malazan professional soldier is the deadliest weapon I know. Had Coltane 3 armies instead of only 3/5 of one, he would end this rebellion before year's end, and with such finality that 7 cities would never rise again. We could shatter Camus to Rouleau now, if not for the refugees whom we are sworn to protect. And yeah, we discussed it a little bit before, but Coltane, if he just abandoned the refugees, he could pretty easily destroy Camus Rouleau. And I like bits like this because people really start noticing that there's something different about the Malazans. They're special in a way. And it's said later that what makes them so dangerous is that they're allowed to think. And yeah, like Malazan soldiers, they're kind of just ordinary people, but they're given leeway to live up to their potential. They're trusted in a way that a lot of soldiers aren't. And I think this kind of speaks to something about humans in general. If you expect little of someone, you're going to get little. But if you actually let them prove themselves to you, then oftentimes I think you'll be surprised.
I like that. I kind of had a little different take on this this passage. I read it as a little more grim. Like, if you keep thinking about the if only, you could get into a really dangerous spiral. Like, if only Coltane didn't have these refugees, right? Like, how different things would be, how many lives from the Malazan side could be saved. So, and I do also wonder, like, how the refugees are feeling. We don't get that much of a glimpse into the refugees themselves. We get a lot from the nobles, but not from anybody else really, except for maybe the servants a little bit. But I do wonder, like, for somebody who has gone through miles and miles of desert and seen loved ones, people that they've been with just die here, there, like how they're feeling. And I kind of wonder, like, why Erickson didn't write from that point of view. But it'd probably be way, way darker and more depressing.
You get like a little bit of it as Dewicker is walking through the train, but yeah, like it would be pretty rough, I think, if we got more of it.
Yeah, it's more that you get it, but it's more distance. So I prefer the way that you're viewing that passage.
Well, if you wrote it that way, it would definitely be interesting and like show like sort of like the everyman's take on the whole thing. But if that was the only way he wrote it, like if that's all we got instead of Dewicker's point of view, we got like some random refugee's point of view. It would be like all this stuff like happening to you with no insight into like Coltane's motives or like the overall strategy or the way the sappers are, interacting with the rest of the troops and that kind of thing. Like it would be like almost like this being like prodded at blindly by all these different forces that you would have no means to like understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wonder if it was a very conscious choice from him to not have any characters specifically, like POV, specifically from that.
Panda, did you have any quotes that stood out?
I did have a few. There's one where it says, "The lesson of history is that no one learns," and Dewicker says that, and it's just so true. And Erickson writes it in a way that's not the cliche way of, oh, history repeats itself. So I really like that. And then another quote also from Dewicker is, "I shall dutifully record them in my list of the fallen." And that's the first time I believe that we've seen it's like the titular phrase. And I thought that was fun because it was also metaphorical because he was talking about noting the dead in his list, right? And he has a corporal with him whose name is List. So he has this like I don't know, this person who's a List that's basically his shadow. He's following around everywhere. And then he has this other List. Yeah. I just thought that was fun.
So later, that brings up an interesting point, and I'll forget if I don't bring it up now. But later on, he talks about how he stops recording the List of the Fallen. Is List with him when he says that, or is List not with him at that point?
Oh,
I don't know.
good question.
Yeah, because List was injured and not with him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that passage where he decides not to write the list is so beautiful, but I don't know if I put it as a favorite quote because it's really long, and it would
I think
be
I did.
long to read.
Yeah, I did. It's in the next chapter.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. I need to stop
might as
pulling
well.
back from that then.
Just put it in. Yeah, anyway.
Any questions for this chapter? Or
I have
speculations?
one more quote, at least, that I would like to share.
Okay.
Hit it.
No one who's grown up amidst scrolls and books can write of the world, Kellenvad had told him once, which is why I'm appointing you Imperial Historian, soldier. Emperor, I cannot read or write. An unsullied mind. Good.
For questions, so we find out in this chapter that the undead dragon was a Talani mass bonecaster, I think from Borg. And last episode, we were told that by Hurin that we've heard the name of the dragon before. So my first guess, and I'd have to go back through Gardens in the first chunk of Deadhouse Gates to see if I have other guesses. My first guess is Pranchol.
Okay.
Oh man, I
do
don't
you have
remember.
a guess, Panda, of what other Talani mass bonecasters that might be that we've heard the name of?
Oh, that's the one where Tattersail was reborn.
Yeah, he gave birth to her.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have many others named, but we also might have heard the name of a dragon or a person and not known they were a Talani mass bonecaster. So this may be something we're just completely not going to ever get in a million years. And
I'm
Hurin's
smiling.
smile reveals nothing.
I'm going to go with what Jasnah said because he put more thought into it than I did.
I like it. It's an excellent speculation.
It is certainly speculation.
Oh, and sorry, I had a couple more comments before we move on to chapter 13 or other people's have questions. I just wanted to point out that Kalam was pissed at Quickbin because he kept him in the dark about the portal zone, but then like he continuously keeps his companions in the dark the same way Quickbin does about especially about the like soul taken and divers and about like what the Imperial Warren is and what his suspicions of what
And
it is are. Yep, and apt. And also, I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen the movie M by Fritz Lang, but yeah, so the scene where Haborg is like walking through the city and he's like blind, but he sees everything more clearly than everyone else, like was really reminiscent. I like watched M like right before I read that, and in M there's a scene where a blind character sees something that nobody else could have, and it just immediately made me think of that. And I'm wondering, here's a question I'd have for Erickson, if M by Fritz Lang influenced that sequence at all.
great movie.
Is it?
It is.
It must be an older film, right?
I think it's like
It's from the
1920s or 30s.
1920s. It's one of the first
Okay.
talkies.
Oh, okay. I had never heard of it. So I'll go check it out. Okay. So there was a conversation between Duiker, Lol, and Sormo, and basically Coltane's train had been going through the desert and they've been thirsty, right? They've been basically dying of thirst. And then there's this tunnel, and then Duiker notices that there's water in the tunnel, and Sormo goes, once Duiker brings it up, Sormo goes, "For lack of asking the right questions, we have suffered long and needlessly." And that was just again, it going back to the if only like they had thought of it, if they had asked the question, if they had tried, right? So many people could have been saved, and it impacted me quite a bit. So I do wonder if like there are other moments, and like what Erickson is trying to say with this passage, like I don't know. And the other thing is Coltane's train. I was it was bugging me. I was like, there's something familiar about this story, and it finally hit me. It reminds me of Moses leading the Israelites across the desert out of Egypt. And there's even like a direct parallel of like crossing the Red Sea, except they had built a bridge. Well, the sappers built a bridge, but also Moses and he made water come out of a rock to for the people. So there's just some parallels, and I do wonder if it was intentional on Erickson's part.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, because like when we were reading about the bridge part, like how the refugees would cross the first river last episode, I don't know why I didn't connect, but like I thought it would be something similar, like somehow the mages parted the water, but nope, they built a bridge. That was pretty cool.
And then the people who tried to follow them were immediately killed.
Yes. Yep.
Similarly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it has to be on purpose.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, okay. There's another piece where Captain Lull says, "A part of him will know if his efforts are mediocre, we're likely to let him live. If he shows us brilliance, we'll kill him." And he's talking about the Semk warlord. And this just reminds me of in Gardens when Paran was told to keep his head down and not be noticed by the gods. And my question is like, what do you think Erickson's take on exceptionalism is? Because there's this theme of like, keep your head down, you don't want to get noticed. And even later on, when people like are getting promoted or demoted, there's this theme.
A few of the later books really are about exceptionalism and
Okay.
its impact on a culture, and I'll just say that.
Okay. So it's a read and find out kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to interpret it however you want, right? Great, thank you for that, Panda.
Chapter 13?
Chapter 13. Take it.
The chain of dogs cross their second river, winning another impossible victory as they do. Kalam and his companions exit the Imperial Warren, having arrived in Erin at last. Kalam then finds a captain willing to take him aboard his ship. Apparently, he has been expected. Manala decides to leave Kaneb and the children to pursue Kalam.
So, I will start with my favorite characters or scenes. We already talked about it, but the thing between Duiker and the unnamed Marine was great.
Mhm.
But I really like the scene where Duiker finds the servant who's being punished by the Lanestro, the noble, and List is such a good wingman for him, and he's telling him off. He's like, man, if Lanestro's not scared of Duiker, and List is like, man, this guy was gonna kill you if you don't do this. What I don't know what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is List is great in that scene, and I love the way that Duiker interacts with the nobles.
Do you have a quote from that section?
I have a quote where so that's the scene where the what's his name, Roach steals.
Bent steals Roach?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because Roach is a roach hunter dog.
Roach
It's
hunter,
like a
right.
dog bred to hunt roaches.
and the quote was a dog that eats cockroaches, rare. I assumed it was raw.
I love that.
I like how in the start of the book we see a slaughter of nobles, and it seems horrifying to us. And in later on in the book, the nobles have been nothing but a pain in the. They've been nothing but a pain.
Tumlet's okay.
Tumlet's okay. Tumlet's fine, and one might assume that there are more nobles that are fine, but man, it really does not make you sympathetic to them.
Good point.
Yeah, you can really see why the crowds in the cities that were tearing apart nobles did what they did. Because if nobles are like this all over the empire, then who's to say I wouldn't be the same way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He does not paint them in a good light.
No. I mean, he brings balance, right? There's the, you feel sympathy based on how he's portrayed something, but then you get the other side of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Pulls no punches. Jasnah, do you have any scenes or characters?
Sure. So I had that same one written as Duiker standing up to noble scum, but also arranging the permanent conscription of the servants, which was
That was great.
awesome. And then I have warlocks being metal as hell, which is like the horse thing, and the sappers being awesome. What does a sea turtle do in winter? Yeah, all that stuff was great. It was a great chapter.
You could say the sappers being awesome for almost every single one of these chapters.
I pretty much do. I love the sappers in this book. They're amazing.
Panda, how about you?
Yeah, I noticed some of the same things. The things that I noted that are different are the imagery that Erickson gives for describing the 7th infantry against the quote-unquote jaw of the enemy. The hollow box that like extends into an oval and then retracts, and it was just very I don't know, it really paints a picture in my mind. It was almost like I was watching a movie, whether it's something like Gladiator or something. And then that's probably the wrong movie. Braveheart. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, okay. That was that. And then the Wiccans announcing themselves in that battle by launching severed heads through the air before them.
I think that was the Weasel clan, right?
Yes. I believe you're right. And that was just OMFG.
Was that the same announcement that came with like the cattle dogs charging ahead of the cavalry and like taking riders off their horses? Oh my god!
Yeah.
I know it's probably not
So
right, but
great.
whenever I picture a cattle dog, I kind of like think of a Rottweiler that's a bit mangier, and I am terrified on behalf of whoever has to be in the receiving end of that.
Yes.
The Wiccans are demons.
Wiccans are demons, and they're dogs too.
Yeah.
How about Ash? Did you have anything?
I liked the battle scene. It was good.
Thank you for that.
I'm curious as to whether the maneuver with the sappers was planned at all, or if the sappers kind of took it upon themselves to do it themselves. I don't know.
Okay, they are crazy.
They are crazy, and the thing
so
they
crazy.
did was insane.
Yes. I was like, couldn't you have thought of a different way? But I don't know.
I mean, what they did was pretty effective.
True. Like, they broke so many boats. Like, probably several of them died during that just because the horses crushing them.
Yeah. It gave me very it gave me the same vibes as whenever the Rohirrim charge in the Lord of the Rings movies, and you just see them just breaking through the enemies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool imagery, and I liked how Erickson provided a way for the cavalry to succeed without making it seem like the enemies were incompetent. Because you know what you do against the cavalry charge? You just stick spears in them and you're fine. This is if you can't stick spears in them if you are disintegrated with grenades.
If you're not there, yeah.
Yeah.
it's pretty clear at this point that there have at least been a few battles where there had to have been some pretty strong coordination between like the 7th, the Wiccans, and the Sappers. But since the Sappers don't show up to the staff meetings, like I imagine it's not just like Coltane going, "Hey, Duiker, go tell the Sappers this." Like they have to be a little more coordinated than that. When does that ever happen? Like how? When do the meetings happen where
sure
Coltane and the Sappers get on the same page? What?
I think the Sappers take it upon themselves a lot of the times to do things that make sense to them, filling holes in plans and such. Because later on, we see Duiker actually carrying some orders to Sappers, and they were already going to do what he was going to order them to do.
Sure, but the building of the bridge, like Coltane knew about that ahead of time. So
yeah,
it's
building of
not
the bridges.
all...
Yeah,
Yeah,
but that was the Sappers in conjunction with like stonemasons and people like that.
God.
That's a good point, and I do wonder if it's going back to the quote that we talked about in the previous chapter, how the Malazan professional soldiers are the deadliest weapon because like they are given autonomy. They could be part of that, but you're right, Yasna. There has to be some sort of coordination. I'm wondering if Sormo has ways to help facilitate. That's my
I don't think
guess.
Sormo understands the Sappers any more than anyone else.
Well, there was a quote that's like even the Sappers may not understand themselves.
Yep.
There was one thing I forgot to mention. There was in this chapter a little cross-cultural misunderstanding between the Wiccans and the refugees. The refugees hate
yeah.
the Wiccans because they think that they deride them and they have contempt for them. But in reality, Duiker understands the Wiccans, and he's like, it's really that they don't want to do disservice to the sacrifice by talking about it, and it just felt really real and raw.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
One of my quotes.
Should we move on to quotes then?
Sure.
Okay. Panda, you take it.
Yeah, basically what you were talking about. The Weasel Clan use the refugees as bait. This is my summary here. The Weasel Clan used the refugees as bait, and hundreds of them died. The Wiccan. Oh no, wait. This is the quote. Sorry. This is the quote. The Weasel Clan. The Weasel Clan used the refugees as bait, and hundreds of them died. The Wiccans remained silent and did not offer any excuses. The Weasel Clan had, however, offered yet another salute to those refugees who had died, with the slaughter of the Tithansi archers in the basin added to the Weasel Clan's actions. An entire Plains tribe had effectively ceased to exist. The Wiccans' retribution had been absolute. Yeah. And then some of my other quotes were, it was Nil and Nether and the mare, and the horses in these books, man.
Yeah, that one was sad.
Life forces were powerful, almost beyond comprehension, and the sacrifice of one animal to gift close to 5,000 others with appalling strength and force of will was on the face of it worthy and notable, if not for a dumb beast's incomprehension at its own destruction beneath the loving hands of two heartbroken children. Ah! And Erickson just deals with the question of like, sacrificing a few to save the many so vividly, like in such a impactful way.
Yeah, and the Wiccans love their horses. They're a horse culture, and it makes it all the more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I read the one about the list?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, this one's long, but it's really good. This is Duiker. His thoughts felt fevered, spinning around in irrational terror of knowledge, of the details that remind one of humanity. Names to faces are like twin serpents threatening the most painful bite of all. I'll never return to the list of the fallen because I see now that the unnamed soldier is a gift. The named soldier, dead, melted wax, demands a response among the living, a response no one can make. Names are no comfort. They're a call to answer the unanswerable. Why did she die, not him? Why do the survivors remain anonymous as if cursed, while the dead are revered? Why do we cling to what we lose while we ignore what we still hold? Name none of the fallen, for they stood in our place and stand there still in each moment of our lives. Let my death hold no glory, and let me die forgotten and unknown. Let it not be said that I was one among the dead to accuse the living.
I don't know if I agree.
Why is that?
Because if we think back to like Kalam, how he didn't, like, one of his fears was helplessness, meaning like he is insignificant. And, you know, sometimes the only thing you can leave behind is your name. And, you know, it's, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I quite agree.
I think it's a noble sentiment of Duiker's. I think he's not saying that people don't deserve to be remembered. It's just that, what are you supposed to do if you know? Okay, if the dead are named, what are you supposed to do? Because that demands an answer, and no answer can be really given.
I think it's more of a reminder to the people who come after, not necessarily. I can see this is pretty complicated. Like, it could be contributing to survivor's guilt, like, why is it this person and not me? But it could also be making a more tangible connection, like it was a real person and it's not just a number, like the death wasn't just a number. So yeah.
Oh, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautifully written passage. It's the first time I've just like sent a quote straight to my wife, and the first thing she said was, "That's beautifully written." But yeah, Duiker's pessimism, and like I understand why he's feeling it and what he's going through and like what he's witnessing and how horrible it is, but he is way more pessimistic than like I think I've ever been in my life, and it is hard to like put yourself in that situation, you know, when you don't feel that pessimism. Even I think that part of why Duiker is constantly surprised by the successes of the Chain of Dogs is because of how pessimistic he is and how like nihilistic he is throughout a lot of this book. Is he doesn't have he has no faith in their ability to survive or succeed, and so he's constantly surprised when Coltane pulls another victory out of his hat.
I think that's an interesting contrast or comparison, I should say, to Haboric, because Haboric is also a historian, and Haboric knows of Duiker's work, and he's written his own version of the histories. Basically, there was a later point that I was going to bring up, but I'll just bring it up here. If the histories that Haboric and Duiker wrote were real, like actual real things we could read, I bet there would be like academic papers written to compare the two. And I would read those papers.
I agree. To the point about Duiker's pessimism, I think I definitely don't blame him for it. And there's a little bit of a quote that I would like to share in regards to this. That rings of Coltane, his well-aimed arrows of fear and uncertainty. He's yet to miss the mark. So long as he does not fail, he cannot fail. The day he slips up, shows imperfection, is the day our heads will roll. And I think both Duiker and Coltane understand that Coltane isn't perfect. So far he has been, but one mistake by Coltane and everyone's dead. And Duiker knows too much of history to believe anyone is flawless. But the soldiers of the Seventh, they don't know that history, so they can do the impossible because they just have that faith. And I think there's merit to both sides of this.
Yeah, again, the balance of perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Haboric and Duiker could be Erickson and Asselmont?
That's a good question.
Well,
Who's
So,
who?
I don't think it matters, but I was just thinking, so like two authors writing about the same thing, or two historians writing about the same thing, yet they might write things differently based on their perspective. And it might be, I don't know, similar to how Erickson and Asselman are writing books in the same world, but a lot of the way that they look at it are different. I don't know.
Note that as a question. Here.
Interesting.
This is just before the battle. We go to partake of death, and it is in these moments, before the blades are unsheathed, before blood wets the ground and screams fill the air, that the futility descends upon us all. Without our armor, we would all weep, I think. How else to answer the impending promise of incalculable loss?
That's good.
Yeah.
My emotions.
I think there was like another piece right after yours, Ash, where it says the count of losses was a numbing litany to war's futility.
That's after the battle, I think. Yeah.
After the battle. To the historian's mind, only Hood himself could smile in triumph. And it's just like, yeah, who here really is the winner? Death. All right, go ahead, Asna.
And I do want to talk about Hood later on in the episode, but not right now. So now that we've talked about how horrible war is, let's talk about how awesome it can be. Because here's a scene of the Marines being awesome. So it says, they were armed with crossbows and short swords, as well as long swords. They wore blackened chain beneath gray leathers. Every third soldier carried a large round shield of thick, soft wood that would be soaked for an hour before battle. These shields were used to catch and hold enemy weapons, ranging from swords to flails. They would be discarded after the first few minutes of a fight, usually studded with an appalling array of edged and spiked iron. This particular tactic of the 7th had proved effective against the Semk and their undisciplined two-handed fighting methods. The Marines called it pulling teeth. And that is the coolest, like, I'm in this movie watching this fight thing ever, and it shows like the difference of like the sort of like technologies and like cultures and style of the two armies and like the cultures they come from, like so vividly. It's so great.
I really like that because it's not relying on magic, right? Like you're saying, it's relying on the technology. Yeah.
Right.
It really reminds me of Roman battle tactics, and that shouldn't be surprising because I'm pretty sure Erickson heavily based the Malazan Empire off of the Romans. They had it's kind of like a reverse tactic. They had a throwing spear called the pilum, and when they threw it and it hit the enemy's shield, it would bend and stick in the shield such that the enemies couldn't use it effectively. They couldn't take the javelin out and use it against the Romans, and they also had to get rid of their shields because and then when they would get in close, the Romans just kind of slaughter them. And I think it really highlights just how effective good tactics can be.
I am very happy that I'm not a soldier.
Aren't we all?
It's fun to play one in a video game, but I sure do die a lot in that video game.
Yeah, should we move on to questions? Great. Panda.
Yeah, what was my question? Okay, so this whole chain of dogs thing, I'm not 100% sure I understand it exactly. Basically, it was Captain Lull to Duiker. They mock our nobleborn. Did you know that, old man? They've a name for us in Debril. You know what it translates into? The chain of dogs. Coltain's chain of dogs. He leads, yet is led. He strains forward, yet is held back. He bears his fangs, yet what nips at his heels, if not those he is sworn to protect. There's profundity in such names, don't you think? So is it the refugees are the dogs?
Yes.
Most specifically the nobles.
Got it. Okay.
Because you know how much of a pain Nethpara has been.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's a lot clearer. Because I wasn't sure if when they were saying they mock our noble-born, if somehow they were also referring to Coltain, but I don't think that's what it was saying. It
I think
is
they're too
the
scared of
actual.
Cold Cane to mock him.
Got it.
No,
Okay,
but it's
thanks.
basically saying that that he could deal with all this a lot more easily without the refugees, and they're like a chain, like holding him back and nipping at his heels and causing him all these problems.
Sort
I
of like the
will.
roach.
Yeah, I will add one comment. Take note of when chains are mentioned.
Okay. Now I'm gonna go search the Fallen.
Pay close attention whenever someone mentions chains.
So I have just a little comment. It's very little. Poor Lestara Yill. She went and got herself arrested, and she had no idea of the political situation.
What a twist.
I know.
Isn't Pormqual a tool?
I hate Pormqual
He
so much.
sucks.
Yeah, no, it's so unbelievably frustrating being with Coltane and these refugees who are like fighting against impossible odds. They're dying by the hundreds and the thousands, and just a few hundred miles away, Pormqual is actively sabotaging the war effort through his own incompetence
And selfishness.
and selfishness. Yeah.
At least that's what it appears. Like, I don't know. I see. I'm just questioning everything.
It's good.
Does Pormqual even exist?
Well, somewhere in this might have been in the last episode, not this one, but somewhere in the chapters we've already read, one of the rebels says to Kalam that the rebellion considers the Gistal to be like an asset, or like their shaved knuckle in the hole too. So there's that. But and in the go ahead.
So that thing with Yield getting arrested, she was going to go with Pearl, but he didn't know about her arrest, so he just figured that she didn't want to, right?
Yeah, because he said he'd see her at dawn. Now, I actually did wonder if he really knew and just kind of let her walk into it, or if he just was like, "Oh, it's dawn. She's not here. Gone."
I think based on no, never mind. Nope, not gonna accidentally do a spoiler this time.
Yeah, I almost did the same one. I think you just almost did earlier.
Shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay. Hit it, Ash.
Chapter 14. Felison and company decide to leave the safety of the buried city and quickly run into a merchant who turns out to be Grillin, a divers who can veer into a horde of rats. Culp is killed and Bowden comes to the rescue, buying Felison and Haborik time to escape. Bowden is mortally injured in the fight and dies in Felison's arms. Felison and Haborik make it to the camp of Tublaki and Leoman.
Toblaki?
Tublaki, I think it is. I just always pronounce it Tublaki in my head.
Okay.
Tublaki. Wait, that sounds like two black eyes. Sorry.
Is that a bad thing?
I don't know.
It is for the person who has them.
Yeah, so Culp's dead, Bowden's dead, Grillin's scary, and yeah.
So
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jasna.
did we ever get confirmation that is Grillin? Because he uses a different name, which made me think it was a different rat divers.
No,
It's
that's
definitely
Grillin.
Grillin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because one of the pieces of evidence is that Miss Ramb is there, and Miss Ramb hates Grillin.
Oh, I see.
You know what? I'm going to nominate myself to start because
Okay.
So first, I think it's really sad, the story of Miss Ram in this book, because he's just kind of like a good guy and he tries to save them from Grillin, but he can't. He's, the magic is too strong for him. And I would just like to say that the scene where Bowden is dying in Felison's arms is heartbreaking and beautiful. And
I'm actually mad at Felison in that scene.
yeah.
Yeah. Because Bowden was trying to get things off his chest, right? Like he was trying to say things to her about Tavor, about like basically whatever his dying words were going to be. And Fellison, to the way that I read that scene, Fellison didn't want to hear it. Like she didn't want any excuses to be made for Tavor. And so she just like basically shushed Bowden. And I got mad at her because I was like, this guy has gone through a lot. I mean, he didn't do it perfectly, right? We've talked about his faults, but he just saved you. And you can't even just like let him have his dying words. That's how I read it. So
Yeah.
I think he got what he wanted to say out.
okay.
I think really all that he wanted to say was, you were not what I expected. And he was trying to say, you know, what your sister told of me is not what you are. Does that make sense? Because
Okay.
his final words were, "You were not what I expected," which was really powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't know if it would become clearer after reading this book what he had expected her to be.
Mm.
I think he expected her to be a lot softer than she was, because what we
Okay.
hear of Fellison from Tavor in Gardens of the Moon is that she's too soft for this world.
Hmm.
And initially she is, but she really toughens up.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
So maybe I read it through the wrong, like with the wrong tone.
And maybe he expected her to be nicer as well, not so mean the whole time. But yeah. I think wondering what exactly he meant by that is a very fair thing, because I don't think Fellison really knows either.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'm less mad at her now.
Well, since we're on there, I just want to say that this is I want to read a quote that was one of the best in the book, in my opinion. So earlier, Hibork thought to himself, "God's girl, would that I had your armor," because she said something just really callous about Culp dying. And she said to herself, "And should I bleed within it, you see nothing, old man. No one shall see, no one shall know." And then she watches Bowden die, and says, "Armor can hide anything until the moment it falls away, even a child, especially a child."
Yeah.
I think it's easy to forget that she's just 15.
It's really easy because,
Mhm.
yeah.
Grow up real fast when you've experienced so much trauma.
Back to something funny. I really like the undead servants and how Grillen
Yeah.
interacts with them.
Okay. So this is I am impressed by Erickson's like strategic timing of levity. Like there are multiple moments throughout this book where it gets like really deep, really dark, and then all of a sudden, boom, right? There's
Mhm.
some humor to bring you back up, and it's just I think it's very well done.
I also thought it was a great piece of little foreshadowing for what was immediately going to happen, because they were all talking about how their deaths were horrific, and it mentioned how they all had tiny little wounds on them.
Mm.
And if they'd only just been paying a bit
Ah,
more attention to the servants, they would have probably realized what was going to happen.
okay, I did not make the connection until you just said that.
Me neither. Not 3 times through.
That's why Grillen was telling him to shut up.
Yep.
Oh.
Wow. I can't believe I didn't catch that.
But I do love the banter.
Hmm.
It's so fun.
Hmm.
Do you have any scenes or quotes, scenes or characters, Jasna?
Y'all got my quotes and my scenes and characters, so no.
It was a good one, right?
Yeah.
I think this is probably the crucial point in the book for Fellison as a character, when Bowden dies in her arms.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think it mentions that there was like a crack in her armor.
Yeah, she thinks to
Her armor just
herself,
falls away.
yeah, or within her suddenly cracking, fissure spreading, and beneath it, behind it, something was building.
Something was building.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
For this chapter. So do we have any more quotes? Because I want to move on to questions if we have anything else.
I had one scene where it's earlier in the chapter where Haborik tells Culp and Felison to tie themselves to him so that they can get down the cliff, and I just had the imagery of Fezzik
Yep.
from The Princess Bride climbing the cliffs of insanity.
Except for a guy a third his size and
Yeah.
twice his age, 3 times his age.
Okay, in terms of quotes, there's one from Felison where she says, or I think this is her inner monologue. She thinks it's the ignorant who find a cause and cling to it, for within that is the illusion of significance, faith, a king, queen, or emperor, or vengeance, all the bastion of fools. And it's just, she's
Something
gotten very
ironic, right?
cynical. Yeah.
Yep. I like
And then-
the bit before that as well. I'll let you finish, but
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
we do not but scratch the world, frail and fraught. Every vast drama of civilizations, of people with their certainties and gestures, means nothing, affects nothing. Life crawls on, ever on. She wondered if the gift of revelation, of discovering the meaning underlying humanity, offered nothing more than a devastating sense of futility.
And then I think even before that, Haborik says to Culp, "Show me a mortal who is not pursued, and I'll show you a corpse." Every hunter is hunted. Every mind that knows itself has stalkers. We drive and are driven. The unknown pursues the ignorant. The truth assails every scholar wise enough to know his own ignorance. For that is the meaning of unknowable truths. It's just like, yeah, it's kind of futile because there's always something that's bigger that's pursuing.
Yeah, this series is in many ways a response to nihilism and the futility we feel at the horrors of the world. And while I don't think Felison has much positive to say on it, I will just say I love how Erickson is willing to discuss these things so well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a question for Panda.
Oh, okay.
Were you satisfied with the resurrection of Shaik?
So when it was just described as, oh, and then they saw an old man with a young woman, I was like, oh my god, it's totally not Absalar. And okay, bear with me here. I do like that it is Felison and not Absalar. And I think it's because with Absalar, she's had so many different like people or whatever you want to call them beings in her. Like her memories are not even her own memories. She has like memories from various different people. With Felison, she has always remained her own person. And I think Shaik noticed that and saw that and was willing, which later on they say like she made a deal with Felison so that Felison could remain as her own identity. And I think that with Felison, she was just more of a receptive vessel for Shaik than Absalar would have been, because I think Absalar would have fought it more.
Yeah, I think part of this book, at least, we don't get Absalar's POV, but I think she is very much determined to not be used again.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Felison cares so much as if she's used, so long as she gets what she wants.
Right.
Or what she thinks she wants.
And what she is motivated by, it's the the river of blood that she sees in her dreams, the vengeance. And Drygna is much more closely aligned with those kind of motives than whatever Absalar's motives might be.
Good point. Yep.
I did enjoy the sleight of hand, though.
Yeah, it was great misdirection, wasn't it? and when you read back, it's so obvious that it's going to be Felison too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I ever bought that it was going to be Absalar, but I didn't think it was going to be Felison. So that was still surprising to me.
There's a little foreshadowing in this book, at least.
Wait, so Jasnah, if you didn't think it was Absalar, who else did you have in mind, or what did you think would have happened?
I don't think I had a clear idea of what was going to happen,
okay.
or even if Shaik was going to be. I wasn't even like focused on that.
Oh, got it.
I just was like, I just kind of thought it was BS, but I didn't know like what. I didn't have a positive idea. I just had like a negative idea of like, no, that's not going to happen.
I would like to call our attention to a quote from actually chapter 12, just in relation to the River of Blood thing. She thinks, "Have I captured an echo of Hood within me? The god of death must surely dream rivers of blood. Perhaps I have been his all this time. Thus I am blessed." What do you guys make of that?
Oh.
She was at a very pessimistic point when she thought that. They were like wandering through the desert, right?
Yeah, I think Hood probably did mark her, especially like in the day when he appeared before her. I think he marked her in Hubork, and part of why he appeared to Hubork was he wanted to show Hubork Felison and what he was going to do to her, or what was going to happen to her, not necessarily because of Hood. I also would just like to say that I think Hood he looms over this book in much the same way that Sauron does in Lord of the Rings.
Do you know, I was like literally just about to say that exact thing. Is that like one of the most important characters in this book is Hood, and he's like, after the prologue, once we get to Seven Cities, he's not there physically. He doesn't like manifest that we know of. But like everything from like the ecosystem to the omens people are seeing, to the ordeals they're going through, to what's looming in their minds, it's like ever present. Like,
yeah.
And you just took the words like right out of my mouth. That was literally what I was going to say. Right, the next thing I was going to say.
Okay, chapter 15.
Kalam sails away from Aaron in the company of a mysterious stranger named Salk Ilan, responsible for arranging passage for him. The chain of dogs inducts the servants it purchased from the nobles into the seventh. Felison and Hubork journey with Leumann and Toblakai to Shaik's oasis, Felison determined to be named Shaik Reborn. Fiddler and co. make their way through an ancient city, destroyed at the hand of Ikariam.
I love this chapter. It has so many good scenes. Jasnah, you want to go first?
Sure. The initiation of the servants into the seventh, like, that choked me up with tears this last time through, and probably every other time, but this time I just like, shit. I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. Just holding back the tears.
It was impressive how heartbreaking and inspiring it was at the same time.
Yes.
It's an example of a concept that's brought up later, the sleight of hand concept that Duiker talks about later.
Yeah, I think it. I would just like to comment on the servant thing. It's really something how this is what breaks Lull. He has been soldiering on through pretty incredible horrors before this, but the idea of inducting the servants into the seventh when they probably would have been better. Okay, well, he thinks they probably would have been better still serving the nobles. Yeah, and then this is what gets him.
And he has to lie to them, or something that he interprets as a lie himself, right?
Yeah. I liked the bit where they were making their way through the destroyed city. This is where the seven holies of the seven cities used to meet. and everything is destroyed except for Akarium's device. And Akarium makes his way to the center of town. He's like, it's been, why was this left? It's been about 94,000 years since I last stood here. And Mappo furiously trying to use some sleight of hand to misdirect him.
Fiddler
The
helps.
revelation, yeah, Fiddler helps. The revelation of what exactly Akarium is and why Mappo is with him was good. Yeah, it's just another, I think, beautiful scene that's also very sad.
That scene is the first time I realized that not only does Akarium not know what he does when he goes into these rages, but I don't think he even understands that he's an ascendant.
He's basically a child, an innocent child that I know it comes up a lot, especially when Ikarium and Apslar are talking to each other, but it might be good to talk about now, is how like they are polar opposites in that Ikarium is a weapon who doesn't remember anything, and through that he gets, this feeling of innocence, and I, who's going to blame him for the things that he does, even though he has killed probably millions of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Apslar, she's also in it, and he's innocent because he doesn't have these memories, right?
Hmm.
Apslar, she did these things, and she remembers them, but she's also in it because it wasn't her,
Yeah.
and that influences the way that they see things. Yeah, it probably would have been better to talk in a later chapter because they have a great conversation about it. But yeah, I like
Okay,
how those two contrast.
you can bring it up again later. I think there's just a theme or like a choice of storytelling that Erickson has chosen is there are just he'll usually give more than one character one view of something, right? So we've talked about this whole balance thing, but also just like with there's two historians, there's two of these characters who have memory loss, or not memory loss, but are both weapon, blah blah blah. And I appreciate that a lot. I think if it was done by somebody not as good as Erickson, it would become too repetitive.
Mm.
But he has enough like nuances between them that makes it interesting.
I think he calls this technique that he uses of this particular technique ringing the bell.
Oh, okay.
He mostly talks about it in terms of a scene by scene thing, but he sets up something and then he repeats it in a certain way, and then he
Okay.
repeats it again. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
This is unrelated, but did you guys catch the Wiccans accidentally discovering penicillin?
Wait, what?
Yeah. When the Wiccan horsewife is treating List, she takes out a piece of moldy bread and then binds it to his wound. And they're just like, this might work. Who knows?
Wow.
So the ringing the bell thing, that's part of how he explains the technique, but the technique itself is called elliptical storytelling.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I had not heard that before. Cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up as soon as we're done recording. I keep meaning to, forgetting.
Okay, I got a bunch of things I want to talk about. I love the captain of the Rag Stopper, and I think he's hilarious.
Yes.
He is.
I'm not the biggest. Actually, I'll just be honest. I don't really like the Rag Stopper parts because
Okay.
I don't really see how it relates to the rest of it. Maybe someone else could explain it to me. But the captain's great and he's funny. Let's see. I really like the scene. So Captain Solmer wants them to go take another city, and it's a terrible
Oh,
idea.
yes.
But he's very influenced by the nobles because he's a noble himself, and so Colton tries to fire him, and he's like, "You can't fire me because I was put there by High Fist." And he's like, "Oh man, I guess we're gonna have to go see the High Fist. Where's the High Fist again?" He's an Aran. All right.
I love
And
that.
I don't hate Captain Solmar either. Like, I actually kind of pity him.
Yeah. Because he basically has to do this or else his family is screwed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a lot of pressures, and even though like I really, really, really don't like the nobles, I understand the pressure like that.
Mm-hmm. I very much agree with you about Kalam's storyline here feeling superfluous. It just feels like something Kalam can do so he's not, I don't know, bored during his journey.
Yep. And it's a way to like consume his quick bin resources before the end, and that's I mean, like, yeah, I see. There's some stuff that's set up for later, but and there's the stuff with like the treasure, but you could have done without it, I think.
There are like sequels in a series where you're just like nothing really happens. It's really to just set up like the ending. At least with this sequel, it's confined to just like that storyline, and it's not the whole book.
Yeah, and I kind of hate how it's like set up like there's this grand mystery happening because at first it's like, oh, there's these pirates following us. Why could they be doing this? And it's like, oh, it's obviously that there's either Salkulan or the treasure is up to something. And it's like, oh,
It
yeah, it's
felt
the
more like
treasure.
like it would be a good story and like a short story,
Maybe.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like what this should have been is 2 lines at the end of the voyage about it, and then a short story separately published.
I would have been okay with a kind of him doing what Kvothe did in Wise Man's Fear. It's just like, all right, the story of my ship's voyage was boring, but basically there was a shipwreck, piracy, a storm, and other things, and not in that order. Eventually, got to where I was going.
Also in this chapter, I liked Bent and Roach's relationship, and how Duiker is constantly surprised that Roach is still alive. And every time Roach gets himself into trouble, which is like all the time, he's saved by by Bent, which obviously is resembling the way that the Wiccans are pulling around the nobles. And I love how much everybody hates Roach and they're throwing rocks at him and that
The
stupid
lap
yappy dog.
dog. Yeah.
Everybody keeps trying to kill him, but they can't.
I mean, Roach is a Chihuahua, right? Is that agreed on by everybody?
Oh yeah, that would make the most sense, I think.
I did not have a specific breed of dog in mind, but now I do.
Could a Chihuahua get that level of communion with the cattle dogs? Like, aren't they all kind of, I don't know, every Chihuahua I've ever met is like this mean, selfish.
Bent isn't quite right in the head. He was kicked by
Name
a
is
horse.
Bent.
Yeah. Like his whole head is smashed and like caved in.
Aww.
Yeah.
I also really liked. I was kind of touched by Absalar's reunion with Crocus. So up until that point, I've kind of felt like everything that we saw between Absalar and Crocus was kind of one-sided, and Crocus just pining after this girl, and she was kind of. But when they reunited, I actually got a feel that she actually cares for him, and I think Mappa was like, "Man, you don't know how good you got it, boy."
She seems to care about him in the Gardens of the Moon scene in the first.
Yeah,
book.
but in this book, at least, it's been Crocus, 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 I think.
Yeah.
Are we going to move on to quotes now? Okay. You want to take it first, Panda?
Sure. You insolent excuse for a crab's anus. Roll back into your hole, blood-smeared turd. Where does Erickson come up with these things?
People used to be a lot more creative with their insults.
That is very true. I did get the sense that Erickson was channeling some Monty Python here.
There shall be no cursing on this book unless it's from me.
Yes. Let's see, what else? This is from by Craig. This is from Duiker. His like internal monologue. The historian shrugged an entire continent pursues us. We should not have lived this long, and I can take my thoughts no further than that, and am diminished by that truth. All those histories I've read, each an intellectual obsession with war, the endless redrawing of maps, heroic charges, and crushing defeats, we're all naught but twists of suffering in a river of pain. Hood's breath, old man, your words weary even yourself. Why inflict them on others? Like, even he is self-aware of how pessimistic he is, but there is still truth in that, in what he thinks, right? How often we've seen in history just the redrawing of maps, the boundaries, whether it's Africa, even in the US and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. The most pertinent example I can think of right now is like World War One. It's like millions of people died for a few hundred feet of land, essentially.
Well, and national pride.
Yeah. Of course, it's more complicated, but let's not get into a discussion of World War One.
No, I've studied that enough. Then there's a quote from Duiker to Felison, and he says to her, "Cities die. Cities mimic the cycle of every living thing: birth, vigorous youth, maturity, old age, then finally dust and potsherds." Which I actually don't know if I'm saying that word right, but I learned the meaning of that word
You're going to see
through
that
this
word a
book.
lot.
Yeah, he likes that word.
Potsherds. Broken pottery, basically.
Yep.
And this is not like related to necessarily the content of this book, but there's a series called I don't remember the series name, but the first book is called Mortal Engines. And basically it's like cities they can move and they can devour other cities.
It's awesome.
And it's a very interesting concept. There was a movie that was made. I think the book was a little better, but I haven't seen the movie. So how do I know? I don't know. Anyway, the concept is really cool, and that's what this quote reminded me of. Anyway.
I also liked the beginning of that as well. There was no great unleashing of brutality here, only sadness, and even that was not but a subcurrent.
Dang. Yeah.
So, do you guys think that Duiker is writing anything down?
No.
Wondered that.
Yeah, I don't think he is, and I think that one of the quotes that you just said, Panda, is one of the hints that he's not. At some point, I don't remember when, it might be a chapter we haven't talked about, somebody mentions how there's not a crate full of scrolls going. Like, I don't think he's written down a single thing throughout this entire book, and they're just like, witness this, it must be written down, and he like witnesses all of it, and he's just like thinking about how depressed he is the entire time and not writing any of it.
I do really like how Coltane appreciates the value of history and appreciates it so much as to even give Duiker that artifact he receives later. But we can talk about that later.
Okay. So here's a little bit of a speculation. If Duiker is not writing anything down, but I think the events happening here are important for later, like later in the series. Like, what would that say about Duiker's like character? What would happen to him? Like, I don't think he would die. I think something else would happen to him, whether it's ascendant or whatever. But that's yeah. Anyway.
Okay, I have a quote. So Hiborik was wondering why Felison was going to save him. And this is her thought. She hesitated before answering him, wondering at how he would take this particular truth. Well, that is something. Not long ago, I would not have cared, because it meant survival, Hiborik. I offer for Bowden. Could you imagine Felison saying that kind of thing even a day earlier?
No.
I like how Hiborik is supposed to be her conscience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's going to be a terrible conscience.
Mm-hmm.
He's like Jiminy Cricket, but A very old version.
Very flawed Jiminy.
Yeah.
I have some quotes.
Okay.
The city's main street was a dusty mosaic of shattered pottery, red glazed body sherds, gray, black, and brown rims. I will think of this, Fellison said, when I next carelessly break a pot. Hibor grunted. I know of scholars who claim they can map entire extinct cultures through the study of such detritus. Now there's a lifetime of excitement, Fellison drawled. I love how Erickson can poke fun at himself. And my second one. And finally, Fellison. Ah, now who is this woman in a child's raiment? Pleasures of the flesh, devoid of pleasure, selves surrendered one after another, kindness yearned for behind every cruel word she utters. She believes in nothing, a crucible fired clean, empty. Heboric possesses hands unseen, and what they now grasp is a power and a truth he cannot yet sense. Fellison's hands, they have grasped and touched, they have been slick and they have been soiled, and yet have held nothing. Life slips through them like a ghost.
Don't know what to think of that.
Yeah. Wait, this was... I think I actually went to the wrong chapter. That was chapter 16, but whatever.
Okay.
I've got one for the current chapter.
Oh.
That was a good quote, though. Relic wants to go back to fishing, hee, Iskaralpus sang. But the place you left is not what you return to, oh no. From one day to the next, never mind years. Relic's done work guided by the hands of gods. Yet he dreams of dragging nets with the sun on his face and lines between his toes. He is the heart of the empire. Lassine should take note. Take note. And I thought that was actually pretty wise, coming from a singing, insane old man.
You took note.
Yes, yeah, I liked that a lot. I also don't believe that any of these people are going to go back to dragging nets, but...
No, I don't think so.
Next chapter?
Wait.
Questions.
Before we move on to questions, there was a quote from... There was something that Dweeker said to Fellison. He said, "You know, Fellison, I begin to understand something of the lives of the Ascendants. To live for hundreds, then thousands of years, to witness this flowering in all its futility, to witness this flowering in all its futile glory, is it any wonder that their hearts grow hard and cold?" And that just puts into perspective a lot of like how Rake feels, even Raced, maybe even like the Talon and Moss as well. Even though, you know, not all of those are ascendants, but just how long they've lived and seen things repeat and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was probably Haboric, not Duiker, who said that, right?
Maybe.
I don't think that's possible.
Well, at some point... Yes, anyway, sorry.
I think it's very telling how the most active gods we've seen by a pretty large margin have been Shadow Throne and Cotillion, and they are also the newest that we know of, at least.
Okay. Yes, it's Haboric. Sorry.
Okay. Should we move on to questions?
Yes.
What's up with Apsalar's father making excuses for Shadow Throne and Cotillion? So, like, he's so thankful to Iskaralpus and Shadow Throne and Cotillion. He's like, hey, a life given for a life taken. It was so nice of them to save me and give me an arm. But they literally murdered everyone that they know, kidnapped his daughter, possessed her, and then turned him into a servant. And he's fine.
But they could have done worse to him.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
They gave him his arm back, too.
Yeah.
And
if I were in his situation, I would not be nearly as thankful as he is.
I think it makes him kind of an interesting guy. Yeah. I think part of it is also that servant is part of a class that is kind of just used to being trampled upon, and
I think too.
the people who trampled upon him this time actually,
Gave him something.
yeah, they weren't 100% bad.
Do we have any other questions or speculations?
Yes. In the ruined city that we've talked about, the Monster Boys and Fid and Crocus come across. Like, my question was, is that city not related to Mappo? Or is
Which one?
it the one that Icarium's like device is still standing in?
It's not related to Mappo, but it is related to Icarium.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Mappo had. Oh, go ahead.
Wait, I was going to say, Mappo. The same thing happened to Mappo's village, where his village was destroyed, and he was told it was done by Icarium.
Mm-hmm.
Was he told?
Yeah, that's what his trail shamaness or something.
The nameless one? I wasn't sure if it was explicitly said.
So yeah, he came to his village destroyed one time, and then I think the village he adopted later, or maybe there was a nameless one in front of the village. I don't know. I think Mappo is remembering things a bit incorrectly. But the shoulder women, that's their wise woman name for their name for the wise woman. They basically told him that Icarium had done it, and the nameless ones would give him a task, and he should do the task.
Okay. Because my speculation from last time was that Icarium did destroy Mappo's village, but I wasn't sure if that was indeed what happened.
It's not certain that that's what happened. Icarium later recounts a dream that he had to Mappo, where it's implied that the nameless ones destroyed the village. But it's unclear. Mappo doesn't know, Icarium doesn't know, and everyone else is dead, so...
Yeah, Icarium's dream, he came upon a destroyed village, and Mappo was like, hey, that's my village, but how you could remember this is from a dream.
Okay. When does that happen?
A later chapter. Like
the ones that we've read?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I must have glossed over it. So Mappo had a flashback to the nameless one, and the nameless one had a gesture that Mappo recognizes as being Jaghut, and she says to him like, mysteries of another led them astray. They bowed to a new master. That is all there is to say. And my question is like, so who is this new master? I think was it raced? I don't know.
I think raced was put down well before that part in the timeline.
Yeah, because I think in this time there are humans around, and humans weren't around until after the Talanimas went undead. Pretty sure. And killed most of the Jaghut.
Okay.
You'll learn more about the nameless ones.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Good for the next chapter? All right. Hit it. Chapter 16.
The chain of dogs encounters the Thalanda, which escaped the war in a fire with Gessler, Stormy, and Truth changed from the experience. The Thalanda takes the wounded soldiers towards Aaron, while the refugees are tricked into an ambush by Corbolo Dom. Despite this, the 7th manages to win yet another victory at great cost. Fiddler and co. enter the fragment of a shattered warren where Tremorla resides. Icarium is determined to let the Azath house take him after Mappo tells him the truth of his past.
I'll start. Gessler and Stormy are awesome.
Yep.
And everything they say is hilarious. And they're great.
They're like my favorite C plot of this novel.
I mean, Gessler getting punched in the face and then promoted. Yes, I'll take that promotion now.
They used to be here. They've been demoted so many times, and they're part of the old guard too, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they shatter Coltane's fist, and they're like almost ascended. So what does that mean about Coltane?
Yep.
Yeah, that whole thing was great.
I had a note here. The imagery of the butterflies. So the butterflies came up so much.
So much.
Yeah. And the imagery of the drowned butterflies in the river, it was impressive, but also sad. And I think it's an effective parallel to the deaths of the war. He talks about how like the butterflies take fatal plunges and just like carelessly. And in many cultures, like butterflies are associated with souls, like people's souls. I'm just wondering. I don't think this is. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I think this is intentional of Erickson using the butterflies as an analogy to the
Refugees.
the refugees and even the Wiccans and the soldiers. And also they're crossing this river that's full of dead butterflies. I do wonder if it's like a river full of souls and they're crossing the river Styx into like the underworld, because the land beyond, like where they're going, right, it's empty. The like Sormo says something about how he can't feel anything living, and there was like some massive war or battle or whatever that happened. So
Yeah, I think that that analogy works too when you think about how the butterflies took Sormo's soul,
yep.
and Sormo sacrificed himself for all the refugees, many of whom drowned.
When Sormo died, oh,
I know,
Yeah, that
man.
was
Sormo
really
was great.
tragic. And you just kind of like have to immediately move on from that too, because like, oh, this is something that's happening. It shouldn't be happening. The crows should be coming to take his soul, but it's not happening like that. And well, you can't do anything about it. You have to move on to the next thing.
It happens like that too.
Yeah, and I think the analogy works well because Dwicker also mentions that it's a cyclical thing. The butterflies come here every season to do this, and well, humans are killing themselves in cycles as well.
good point.
So, does the fact that it was butterflies taking his soul and not crows mean he's not going back?
Yes, I believe so.
Because the butterflies will die before they find a wicked stillborn to put him in, or what?
I think crows and the Wiccans are just kind of linked like that, and the Wiccans are not linked with butterflies.
Then why did the butterflies take his soul at all?
There were no
think
crows.
that might have been Hood interfering because he doesn't like being cheated. But it also might have been the mage that was controlling butterflies. He might have been influenced by Hood in some way. I don't know. Yeah, it's unclear as to exactly why that happens.
So that means that Sormo and the old warlock, like that's the end of this character.
He's dead. Or at the very least, he's dead in the sense that most people are dead.
Okay.
His soul is in butterflies at the very least. What those butterflies are going to do, who knows?
Okay.
So the whole thing was caused because Nethpara and the other nobles refused to listen to Coltane.
Okay, the
And
moment that the messenger came into the camp and was like, whatever that guy's name is,
Hamlet?
showing mercy. Yeah. I was like, no, that's not how this is going to go down. They're going to die.
Are you talking about
Anyway.
Corbeau Dom showing mercy? Yeah.
Yeah.
And did anyone wish that Duiker finished the job when he had the chance?
Yes. I'm surprised that anybody stopped him.
Yeah, I know. Nethpara.
Like, Nethpara has the blood of at least 20,000 people on his hands.
The number, I think that's what's the most heartbreaking. It's just the sheer number of people lost from this one crossing.
And he has the gall to blame Coltane for it.
Yeah.
The bit that got me was when the refugees finally broke and they decided they'd had enough of just being slaughtered like animals. And they grabbed the pikes by the blades, not caring that it cut them to the bone. They died by the thousands trying to take those rafts and kill the people that are trying to kill them, and they just couldn't be stopped. And
Yeah, Duiker was
Oof.
like trying to have some semblance of order to tell them to go help in the forest, and before he could even like really finish, they're just like, "Yeah, let's go." I was like, "Oh my god, yeah."
Any other scenes to?
Puss being able to call the hounds.
That was cool. He was kind of surprised he could do it.
Yes.
My quotes were right before that.
I talked about it earlier, but this was where the scene between Apsalar and Ikariam talking was great. And anytime that I think a few times Mappa overhears a conversation, somebody talking with Ikariam, he's just like, "Oh man, I hope Ikariam doesn't look at me, because I'm gonna give myself away." He's such a big softy. That's
Yep.
one of my favorite tropes in storytelling is the gentle giant, and I think Mappa fits that so well.
I'm assuming that there's fanfic out there about Mappo and Ikariam, if anybody knows of it. And it's not
Send it your
too
way.
No. Yeah, you can tweet us or something.
I'm gonna search for that now.
Oh no.
I'm actually really curious how much fanfic there is of Malazan, because I wouldn't think that the crowd that reads it would engage much in fanfic, but I've been surprised before.
I haven't tried looking, but I just expect there to be fanfic about everything.
Anything else?
Actually, my D&D campaign is fanfic of Malazan.
Oh yeah, mine too. So quotes?
Yeah.
Who's go first?
Yesna had something.
Sure. It's Iskarl Puss being crazy. Shadow Throne! My worthy Lord of Shadow is thinking. Yes, thinking furiously. Such is the fastness of his genius that he can outwit even himself. A very Grappa-like line. Or Crop-like line, rather.
I think that kind of gives credence to the idea that Ikariam has a lot of influence on Pust's mind. Maybe not necessarily a possession, but like an
Shadow Throne?
avatar.
That
Yes,
Shadow Throne, yeah.
It's Shadow Throne.
Yeah. I mean, if he's in communion with his god very often, then I would be surprised if some of it didn't bleed over.
Yeah, he's a high priest.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that's assuming he's not just like making it up completely and like is excusing his own like lapses with that, but yeah, he is a high priest.
Mm-hmm. He wouldn't have been able to call the Hounds of Shadow if he wasn't a high priest.
Right.
Mm.
Oh yeah, totally.
My quote is a bit more somber. Actually, it's a lot more somber. But it's also Fiddler, Mappo, Ikariam, the crew talking about the Azeth house. Tremorlore is aware of those who seek it, Iskarl Puss cackled, then ducked at a glare from Crocus. Including us, I take it, Fiddler said. Ikariam nodded. Aye. And it means to defend itself, the Trill said. If it can. Mappo scratched his jaw. The responses of a living entity. And there's another quote, which is from Duiker. I think it's his internal monologue. It says, "There is no escape, another lesson of history. Mortality is a visitor never gone for long." And I feel like these two kind of go together in that when you're like alive and feeling like in the moment, you feel invincible. But mortality is like, it's gonna come. And yeah, it's a visitor never gone for long.
Right around the time of your first quote, um, I liked Mappo realizing that Crocus is not as dull as he seems.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You better call your hounds, or like, what if Ikariam kills the Azath?" And Mappo's like, "Oh my god, he actually he understands what's going on."
Right.
Again, more Crocus growing and becoming
Mhm.
likable.
Agreed.
I like how it's made clear that even the Azath houses, which are, as far as we know, are the most powerful entities in the universe that have shown up, at least, even they can be killed. And man, it's Malazan. Everything can die.
Mm-hmm. The hunter is hunted.
Mm-hmm.
I have another one with Icarium.
Mm-hmm.
I, Icarium, such are memories in full flood. We are not simple creatures. You dream that with memories will come knowledge, and from knowledge understanding. But for every answer you find, 1,000 new questions arise. All that we were has led us to where we are, but tells us little of where we're going. Memories are a weight you can never shrug off. And this was Apsalar talking to Icarium, which is on the nose.
Yeah, the
She
conflict
would understand.
the conflict between remembering what you did and wanting to, I don't know. Would you want to remember? I don't know.
Would
Apsalar
you say
seems to think that Icarium is better off without his memories.
Mappo is too, right?
Yeah.
If I were Mappo, I'd probably do the same thing.
Not remembering what you did doesn't erase the fact that you did them. It doesn't erase the pain or whatever consequences you cause. So at the point, what your question is really getting at is like, to whose benefit? And it would be the person that did it, and it would be, um, I guess it's more of like huh?
Or I thought you were gonna go with like insulting to his victims.
Yeah, it's more of like, if you did something wrong, is it objectively your responsibility for like remembering what you did, like living with the knowledge that you did it, you know?
Icarium certainly seems to think so.
Yeah.
And I think there's a nobility in that. He searches for these memories, even knowing, I think, that they will break him if he finds them.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know my own personal view on this. It's not something that I've necessarily thought that much about. But even just thinking now of like stupid things that I've done, not like I've killed people, making that clear. But just like whether it's like stupid or hurtful things that I've said to people, and in normal life, like I don't remember it, but sometimes they'll just surface and
Mhm.
I feel that twinge, like, ooh, why did I say that? And it's more of a reminder for me to not repeat it. So I don't know.
I was just reminded of a 1968 Japanese movie. There's a Korean man who was sentenced to death uh, because he murdered someone. But right before the murder was supposed to happen, he loses all memory. And so the the movie is a bunch of people trying to get him to remember these things because they can't rightfully hang someone for not remembering their crime.
Ah, okay.
Like how do you kill someone who can't even like, you know, who has the innocence of ignorance? And it's about a lot of ethnic problems between Koreans and Japanese at the time. But it's a really good movie and it's really uh, relative relates a lot to this. It's called Death by Hanging.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, it's interesting because Apsalar at least seems to think that if you don't have memories, then you can't be held responsible, which speaks to the movie you saw. It's a really difficult question, I think. I don't think Erickson himself has an answer to it. I think he wants us to think about it.
I like it,
Well, he achieved his job, at least with me, so at least with us.
Where were we?
Quotes.
Okay.
I'll share mine. When Apsalar is recounting the sets of memories within her, she recounts a little bit of dancers. And there's a final irony. A part of him, in defiance of his need to seek vengeance upon the scene, actually sympathizes. After all, she bowed to what she perceived as a greater need, one of empire, and chose to sacrifice two men she called friends to answer that need. So, This is the book where you start to sympathize with Aline from all sides, even the people she allegedly murdered.
Should we move on to questions or speculation?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any? Because I don't.
Why does Coltane keep sending Dweeker on these operations? Like, even Dweeker's like, why am I going on this like special ops? And my other question is this like Ericsson's way of showing us more action? Because we have Dweeker's POV.
I have 2 ideas. Yes, want to take it?
I think it's hinted at when Coltane gives Dweeker the artifact later on in chapter 19. And also just kind of throughout the whole book, but definitely that Coltane thinks it's important for the Empire to have an account for the history to be the history of the migration of the chain of dogs to be in imperial memory, essentially, of like the facts of like what actually happens.
You mean like the smaller details of it?
Right.
Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, okay. The details, right.
I think that Coltane wants to make sure that what has gone on here does not go unwitnessed.
Right.
So, like, them going after the Zem warlord, because I guess what is the impact of that, of Dweeker witnessing that operation versus if he hadn't witnessed it firsthand?
Because he's able to record and relay, you know, the details of the entire operation, not just, you know, kind of a bird's eye view of the situation, but of like everything that these people went through to make this happen,
and to make him literally go down in the mud with them.
Okay, Huron, did you have 2 points?
It's basically what they said.
I have questions for Panda and I think Jasnah. So first of all, what do you guys think was up with that warren of fire, eh? Why did it not burn them to death?
Wait. Okay, I need a quick.
They were gilded, like Bowden.
And Bowden, yeah. Bowden thought he would be immune to fire afterwards, but he was not.
Okay, so I had a speculation that I didn't think Stormy was going to die because of the Talana Moss, like, specifically giving the sword to Stormy. And I was like, okay, this is significant enough where, like, Stormy's not going to just poof. In terms of Gessler, I'm not 100% sure. Actually, I don't know.
So
because Gessler waved hi to the undead dragon, maybe.
So what? They went through a warren of fire. It was this like in between the illusionist warren and the real world.
This was the bit where Bowden and Felison and Bork and Culp went off the ship because the ship was on fire and everything around them was fire. Yeah,
I do know that, but I'm saying I guess I didn't understand where the fire came from. Was it like I kind of thought that the like tear between Culp's warren and the real world was the source of the fire. So they went through another warren.
They went through a warren of fire.
Yeah, the dragon was going through the warrens, and it took them into that warren.
Okay. So how did they get from the warren of fire to the real world then?
I don't think we see that.
Yeah, I don't know.
The dragon probably came out. Took him with him.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Just
next chapter.
Well, one more thing. So we get the notion of a shattered warren in this chapter.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
That's the warren that the Azath house is like stopping from.
Yeah, that fragment is what So presumably there are other pieces of this warren elsewhere.
Oh, great. Okay. The fabric of space-time is torn and pieces of it are littered everywhere. I have no idea. I thought that maybe the rest of the Warren was in the Azoth house and there was a piece of it that was like struggling to get out. But it sounds like no, it's the Azoth house is in possession of just a piece, a
Yeah, it's
shred.
essentially pinned that piece in place.
I have some memories of Ice thoughts about that, but I don't know what I can do with that, with what we've read so far.
Okay.
You know what I just thought of? Pacific Rim. Like the openings where the monsters come out.
Yeah, the kaiju. Yeah.
Great movie.
Anyway.
Chapter 17.
Chapter 17. The Ragstopper fights with some pirates, some double-crossing ensues, and is dealt with. Felison and their companions arrive at the oasis, and Felison prepares to present herself to the followers of the Whirlwind.
I have nothing in this chapter.
Yeah. this is very
literally
in
have
between
no
for me.
notes.
Yeah, because this is mostly about Kalam, right?
Mm-hmm.
I liked the banter. Yeah, I don't care about the Kalam stuff. I like the banter between Shaik and her companions in this chapter.
She's got Toblakai and Leoman pinned.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, she gives I don't know, prophecies or insights into them that were really on the nose.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which character do you find more interesting, Toblakai or Leoman?
Liam.
Why?
Oblakai.
Oh, we got two answers. Why?
Because his cynicism and crisis of faith is interesting. His conflict, internal conflict.
Panda?
I believe it was Toblakai whose future that Shaik saw and she was appalled by.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So
That's intriguing.
why. Yes.
Yeah.
I will give my first impression. I was more interested by Toblakai because he's got a cool tattoo on his face, and he picked up Callum off his horse.
I mean,
And
yeah,
he fought like some white bear thing, like barehanded or
Yep.
something.
Yeah, he's kind of
Yeah.
a vamp.
He said he was going to do something, and he went and did it.
Yeah.
Also, I will note that he has the souls of the ones he has slain chained to him,
Okay.
which it's just a cool concept, you know. We haven't no this hasn't happened to anybody else that we know of.
It kind of reminds me of Dragnapur though, right? Like
Happened to
how
me.
okay. I don't know what that means.
Yes, the
Kieran.
legions that you have slaughtered herein.
The legions of ants. Okay, I know we don't like the Kalam storyline as much, but there was one piece that did stand out to me, and that was when the fighting actually began on the Ragstopper. I did go from one emotion to another during that scene. So, like when the Enkara roll showed up, I was like, "Oh crap!" But also sad because Kalam points out like this is a rare creature, even it's in its own home habitat, and I'm like, this creature's gonna die because it just so happens to be on the quote unquote wrong side, right? But then there's the comedic effect that comes in, which is when the first mate asks on behalf of the cook, "Hey, is that big lizard tasty?" And I lost it.
It's a delicacy.
Yeah,
Delicacy,
it's
yeah.
a delicacy.
I did enjoy those parts a lot. The fight scene was cool.
Yeah, I did not have any questions for this chapter.
Neither did I. See, I really like Callum stuff, just not on the Ragstopper.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I do care about Kalam's story in this book, just not at this part. It just drags out.
Chapter 18.
Fiddler and company make their way through the maze of Tremolor, vanquishing divers and soul taken along the way with the help of the Hounds of Shadow. Felison presents herself to the followers of the Whirlwind and gains the favor of Drishna.
I can start. So something that Erickson is good at is, at least for me, is making me care about things because a character I care about cares about it. Like without the attachment to the character, I would not have the same response. And the specific example is Mesrem. Is that how you say
Sure.
his name?
Yeah.
The brown bear soul taken.
Mhm.
Like the scene where Mesrem comes to save them or help them in the maze, and Mappo is struggling in Akarium's grip, and he's like, "It's an ally. It's a soul taken, or it's an ally." And
He's a
Iskaro Plus
friend.
is just like, "It's a soul taken." And yeah, Mappo just sagged suddenly. A friend, he whispered, and I'm just like, I wouldn't actually care about this character, except I care about you, Mappo.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
even more somber than that because he says the first to fall this day.
Mm.
Yeah, Fiddler thinks that. Hmm.
Yeah, and Mr. M, looking back, he's a really good guy. He tries to help people. You get the sense that he's not in this for power like every other soul taken in Diverse is. He just looks out for who he considers his friends.
Yeah. Which that explains. No, that doesn't explain it. Because was Mesrem the soul taken that?
Yeah. I tried to help with him, Krillin. Yeah.
No,
He just. Oh, sorry.
back in when Sormo opened the Warren and there were a bunch of like soul taken endeavors like fighting and.
I think that was a demon.
Oh, that was a demon. Okay, never mind.
I think so. I could be
I
wrong.
think you're right. Never mind. Last thing for what stood out is the conch shell is dope.
Yeah.
It was dope. I'm glad that paid off. Are you sure you didn't touch you?
I'm shocked at how many people pronounce that conch since starting this podcast. I grew up in Florida, and it's conch.
Okay.
No. Oh, gross. No way. Conch
If
all the
you
way.
look it up online, it says the correct one is conch.
Words are
Oh.
pronounced how people use them.
Well, in Florida,
Conch.
we say it the right way because there's conchs everywhere.
I like how creepy Tremorlor is.
Yes.
Yes.
Just like a maze of roots that are living and drag things into it. I also like how Kimlock is really cool in retrospect.
Kinlock's cool.
Yeah, he really could have killed that Malazan army that was outside his city.
Yeah, he could
No
have.
kidding.
Like in terms of power levels in the series, it really makes me curious as to where he ranks.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say anything until I've read the series.
The sapper watched Mappo sling his weapon over his shoulder, then gently lift Ikariam. The jag hung limply within those massive arms. The scene was touched with such gentle caring that Fiddler had to look away. I'm just touched by the monster boys' relationship. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yes.
They're so cute together.
they are.
Okay, I am very impressed that Mappo can carry Ikariam. Because Ikariam is like 7 feet tall and half jag hut. And my understanding is that Mappo is like squat but solid, you know?
Mhm.
And it's just like trying to imagine Mappo carrying Ikariam.
I like the scene a lot where Mappo has the mace and Mr. Ram is there to help them with this in Carl, I think, that is coming after them. And Mappo swings the club and it just folds the entire thing upon itself.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Yasna?
I picture Mappo kind of like an orc from World of Warcraft, and Ikariam kind of troll. So even though Ikariam's tall, since he's only like half jag, he's not as like ripped. So Mappo's like a big old orc guy.
I have similar images. Any more quotes?
Yeah. All right. I love quotes about sappers being awesome, and I love Iskarl Puss being insane. And this quote combines the two, so I have to have this one. Iskarl says, "Damn sappers! Who invented them? Madness!" Fiddler grinned. "Who invented them? What? Kellenved? Who else? Who ascended to become your god, Pust? I'd have thought you'd appreciate the irony, High Priest."
Sappers definitely channel the energy of Shadow Throne.
So are we cool for the last chapter and the best chapter?
I think I'm. Oh, go ahead.
One thing. Initial impressions of those high mages in Shaik's camp.
Or then Bidithal, Lorik, and
The
what was
other
the third
one.
one's name? The other one.
There's some schemy do-badders.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
That's
Bidithal,
with it.
notably, sterilized Shaik Elder, or the old Shaik, and probably castrated her as well, and raped her.
Oh,
Yeah. So if you're wondering who the real POS of this place is,
those three.
that one specifically.
At least
Yeah,
Bidithal.
that one specifically.
Yeah.
The last one seemed the least shady
Yeah.
of the three.
He seemed on the level to you.
He seemed like very similar to like Leoman, but a mage. Like just kind of pragmatic, practical. I don't remember what the
It was Lorik.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter next.
The chain of dogs makes their way through the site of an ancient conflict between Jagat and Tlanimas. They are then saved from certain defeat by the Kundril, a desert tribe impressed by the Wiccans. Kalam discovers the ship is being blown off course towards Malaz City. Fiddler and Co. make it to the door of Tremorlor, which refuses them.
Such a slam in the face. Slap in the face. That's what it is.
Use that as well.
If it's okay, I'd like to start with the question for this chapter.
Okay.
And my question is, why was the end of chapter 9 the best in the
It wasn't. That's my yeah. I
Wait,
like
what?
it. I like it. I don't think it's the best point in the book.
I agree with Ash.
This is my second favorite part in the entire series.
Oh, wow.
It certainly was my favorite part in this chapter, or at least the part that made me like.
Well, when I'm not reading Malazan, about this scene and cry.
Oh, interesting.
It is, I think, the first. Well, okay, it's the second, but it's the first big break the chain of dogs gets.
Okay, I guess to specify, it's the part where what are they called? The
Kundril burn tears.
Yeah.
Kundril burn.
Actually, I don't think we know them as the burn tears yet, but yeah, the Kundril come.
Mm-hmm.
The Wiccans!
Where-
The Wiccans!
I was confused as I messaged you guys in the DMs. I was like, what? Yes. But I understand it now.
I'm disappointed that nobody else loves it as much as I do. I hope some of
Yasna
the
does.
listeners can come and agree with me.
Oh, well, I guess Yasna doesn't love it as much.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Why is this the best chapter in the book?
It's not.
A lot of things happen.
There's something wrong with you, Ashaman. All right, so this
This is
scene's
a good
got
book.
this chapter has got the scene with Coltane and the sappers, and he demotes one, right?
Yep.
The captain.
But promotes another.
It's got the Trigala Trade Guild and the update from Darujistan and the implication that that Lysine and Dujek are still working together, and like Dujek like backing up Coltane. So good.
So much in this book or in this chapter.
Were you guys surprised that Dujek wasn't actually outlawed?
I have in my notes all the schemes. How clever is Lysine really? And this feels very Ocean's 11 to me.
Yeah, she's very smart.
This scene we also get Moby back. Moby comes back.
Mm-hmm. And he is apparently super scary.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I think for this chapter it's kind of a free for all, based on just the structure of
Go
it.
ahead.
Moby reappears. There's something about Moby, and Moby was Mammoth's familiar. I'm wondering if when Race possessed Mammoth, whether he also had something to do with Moby. Like, I don't know if it's possession or whatever. That's my thought there. Silence, crickets.
I like the Trigal Trade Guild because they are, I think, the first truly progressive company in Malazan.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone owns a share of the company, and the workers are truly invested. It's very socialist.
Surprised when he kept saying like their shareholders or something were there.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
But it's kind of like it sort of is socialist, but on the other hand, it's like, well, that way we know you'll like defend the cargo to the death. Like, so it's like everybody's kind of exploiting themselves,
Well, everyone goes into the contract with eyes wide open, right?
Sure.
Yes.
And they only get wider.
Yeah. I like how crazy the idea seems, because even now when we don't know much about Warrens, like the idea of going through Warrens to deliver trade goods, that's wacky.
And not even just like on Genabacchus, but all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
That is nuts.
They said they went through Hood's Warren, right?
Yep.
And
Hood does not like
they
that.
Didn't stay very long.
Yeah.
I was the lead guy who like talked to Coltane and stuff and delivered the gift and all of that. He reminded me so much of Krupp, but they're different characters, which surprised me once I got his name. But it makes me think that like all Jinnabacan mages are like super insane and like.
I don't think Krupp is a high mage, and I'm pretty sure this guy is.
Is Krupp not a high mage?
I don't think so.
He could do magic at least.
He's a guy who can do magic, and he's smart, but I don't think he's necessarily super powerful.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's hiding more.
He was powerful enough to pull a Jaghut tyrant into his dreams.
Is that magery though?
I don't think that's magery. Yeah.
Okay,
Is
well,
that-
I don't know enough about magery for that.
That wouldn't be aspected to a Warren, and that's what we traditionally think of as when someone is a mage, they use Warrens or holds, but that comes up later.
Oh yeah, we were.
Is that like?
We were introduced to holds.
Yes, we were.
Magic
The
here
older
evolves.
than Warrens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, regardless, he's a mage, this guy's a mage, and they're both nuts, and they're both from Jinabacchus. That was all my
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in this chapter we get a lot of breaks, or I would call them fist pumping moments. When the trade guild comes and when the Control Burntiers come save the day. Were you inspired by this?
Sort of, but it's also this is also the moment where Dwicker is finally being proven right, because it's at this point that the wheels are really coming off the chain of dogs. They would have lost the combat if either of these things hadn't happened to save them, neither of which they could have expected. Coltane, like he's done an excellent job so far, but it's just not enough.
Right.
But they were saved by the good graces of third parties on both accounts. I think that's inspiring.
Or convenient.
Yeah.
I'm torn. Honestly, I'm torn.
That it's solidaristic, and I like that.
Mhm.
What does that mean?
Solidarity.
Oh,
Like-
okay.
The
Got it.
tribe that wants to compete against Thomas Relo's tribe is showing solidarity with Coltane and the Chain of Dogs. Dujek as a fist, who wants Lysine to have Coltane at her back, is showing solidarity throughout, with both Lysine and Coltane. So there's a lot of like compassion and solidarity, etc.
And
I
Coltane says, screw this to his potential second chance. I'm going to die with my men.
In both cases, they were inspired by the bravery and the exploits of the army.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, that's amazing.
Yep.
So I agree with you. The reason I think I'm not as gung ho about it is because it came out of almost nowhere. Like, if there had been more of a build-up, some sort of hints along the way, I would have bought it more. But because we didn't really get anything throughout the whole, I don't know, was this 3/4 of the
You
book
mean about the trade guild?
about the trade guild, about like the how other parts of the world are able to get news of what is happening with Coltane and the refugees, right? Like, there was very little, if any, parts about how well known this thing is, right? I mean,
Okay.
thinking on it, like, yes, a massive group of people moving across a large piece of land, sure, like, there will be talk, but a lot of times it's like people who are trying to fight them and they were running away. So
I think it's easy to underestimate how long it's been. I think it's been like it's been at least 6 months since this whole thing started, so that would give time
Okay.
for interested parties to know this. And also, I'm fine with this in large part because it doesn't solve the central conflict of the chain of dogs. Yeah, because they're still, like the Kundral weren't able to defeat Corporal Dom's forces.
True.
They just beat them back a bit. So those forces are still there. They're still trying their best to kill Coltane and his army, but they've just been delayed one step.
Yeah, if these reprieves brought them to safety, I would be more on Panda's bandwagon here, but they just kind of like, just give him a little breathing room.
Boost. Yeah, I guess that would be one thing, is like, I really don't know how long it's been. There's very little mention of specific markers of time. You just know, like, it's day, it's night, it's the next day. But in terms of like total time span, I had no idea.
Any other scenes are stood out to anybody else?
Oh,
Quotes?
there. Okay, this would go into quotes.
Okay.
So Iskarl Pust, and I don't know if Yasna, you had marked this part. But Iskarl was like, muddy the puddle. Oh yes. Yank his loyalties this way and that. Excellent. Witness the strategy of silence, while the intended victims unravel each other in pointless, divisive discourse. Oh yes, I have learned much from Tremolor, and so assume a like strategy. Silence, a feigned mocking smile, suggesting I know more than I do. And then he goes on and goes on. And then he then says something like, the blathering of secrets, the high priest of shadow uttered in a wholly different voice. So they judge me ineffectual. The other spun to face him. Esquirrel Puss offered a beatific smile.
So this is the moment that it's revealed that whether or not Iskarl Pust is intentionally blathering his internal monologue, he knows that he's doing it, which he's indicated all the way up to this point, including the quote that you just read right before that he doesn't know he's doing it. Like it's like this passive thing that he's not aware of. And he finally indicates, that it's a long con.
He knows.
He knows that he's doing it. You could debate whether it's intentional or not, but he knows.
Does he?
I think he knows at least to some extent. I'm not
At
sure.
least
I'm not convinced he knows all of it.
I think he thinks he knows.
Well, there's something in him that knows, because he said the blathering of secrets, and so the judgment ineffectual, and that indicates that some part of him knows.
Okay.
Even if it's not dominant. all the time. It did say in a wholly different voice. So,
And
who knows?
I think it's very impressive how he's able to manipulate people who know that he is manipulating them, and they try to get out of it, but he's just too good.
Well, Crocus let's just kill him and be done with it. And then Fiddler's like, but he's so entertaining.
Also, Crocus thinks he could kill Iskrelbust.
Yeah, he couldn't kill High Priest.
No.
So I've got a quote from after the sappers get their command change, after Coltane demotes the captain and promotes the sergeant to captaincy. So Coltane says, "From what I've gathered, you never asked anyone's advice when you were captain." The captain says, "Aye, that's a fact. Nor did you attend any staff briefings." "No, sir." "And why was that?" Menzer shrugged. Captain Bungle spoke. "Beauty sleep, sir. That's what he always said." "Hood knows the man needs it," Bolt muttered. Coltane raised an eyebrow. "And did he sleep, Captain, during those times?" "Oh, yes, sir. He sleeps when we march, too, sir. Sleeps while walking. I've never seen the like. Snoring away, sir. One foot in front of the other. A bag full of rocks on his back." "Rocks?" "For when he breaks his sword, sir. He throws them, and they're in a damned thing he can't hit." "Wrong," Mincer growled. "That lapdog." And it's just the perfect sappers are awesome, and also the lapdog gets referenced. It's a great Chain of Dogs moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no more notes for the rest of the episode. That's it.
And the insanity of carrying a bag full of rocks.
And falling asleep while you're walking with that.
Falling asleep while you're walking. Yeah. No, the sappers are inspirational. Screw the Control burn tier. The Control. Sappers are where it's at.
So, any other quotes? Yeah,
I mean, I have more, but they're too much of a downer. I'm done with being a downer.
So, this is our last chapter we're covering. Do we have any questions for the whole segment, or up to book to now, or for speculation?
Panda, do you think the Chain of Dogs is going to make it?
Goodness. Yes, no, maybe. So I think that when you say the Chain of Dog, you mean just any of them? Or do you mean
Interpret it how you will.
intact? I mean, I think some of them will. I think that Dweeker is going to make it, for reasons I've said previously in this episode. And I think the sappers are not gonna make it.
Do you think Coltane's going to make it?
No.
Okay.
I think he's going to be known, but I think he's going to die. Now, whether or not he comes back in a different form, Erickson just not willy-nilly, but he has that option open to him. But I think Coltane is going to die.
Do you think that Kalam is going to succeed?
I don't think so. Why? Just a feeling. I don't. Well, okay. Here's the thing, right? Something that Erickson has proven over and over again is that whatever you think is most likely going to happen is not going to be what happens. Or you would only be 50% correct. I think Kalam will meet Lasine, but I don't think he will actually succeed in killing her.
How about the Path of Hand storyline with Apsalar and Ikari Mamapo?
Something that I struggle with in this book is having a grasp on Fiddler's motivation for really going into the Azath house. I know, like, yes, it's whatchamacallit, there's the one in Malaz City, but that's not where Lysine is, and that's where they came from.
Mhm.
That's not where they came from.
They came from
Fiddler?
Chagacus. They came from
Ah,
Chagacus at the end of Gardens of the Moon.
okay. Wait, so okay, I think I'm getting confused because Crocus was saying like, "Oh, I saw an Azath house," but he meant the one in Darujistan,
You did.
Mhm. The brand
Right.
new one.
the brand new one.
And
So
I met
like how?
Anarake.
Huh?
He also said he met Andam Anarake, and
Oh
Mep was
yeah,
like,
he
"Oh,
did. Um, but then how did they know about the one in Malaz City?
everybody
The one
knows
in the
about
last
that.
bit, yeah. It's not a secret.
Oh, okay,
It's been
people
there
just know.
Everybody
forever.
knows about it.
They just avoid it.
Yeah, Fiddler
Okay.
thinks about that. I think it was in the reading for the previous episode, might have been this one, but he thinks to himself about how people just like steer clear of it while they're walking through Malaz City, and they don't talk about it.
Okay. So we know that Kalam is on his way to Malaz City because of somebody's Warren or whatever is blowing them off course. We know that Fiddler, if they're able to get through Tremolor, is most likely going to also end up in Malaz City. So something is going to happen in Malaz City. That's as far as I got.
Excellent speculation.
Well, you speculated that Kalam would meet the Empress and fail to kill her. So, do you think that Apsalar will end up killing her in this book? Because that was the backup or a potential backup plan that's been discussed.
I feel like Lysine is not going to die by the hands of either Kalam or Apsalar. I think there's another twist. I don't know what it is, but I think there's a twist. There may be multiple twists there.
That's a fair assumption in an Erickson book.
Great. So has your enjoyment changed in the last 7 chapters?
Yes, but this book was much slower for me than Gardens was. And I think there are a couple of things, and that's not necessarily because of the book. One is just, with Gardens, there was a lot of energy and it was new and exciting. And I just went in and like plowed through it. And also the chapters were shorter. And there wasn't as much exposition. So with this one, it was definitely a much slower read. And because of the tone, because of the longer chapters, yeah. I am enjoying it more, but it really depends on how this book ends.
I agree with all of your points, and I think Gardens is a much faster paced book,
Yes.
and there's a lot more background world building in this one, especially. I still enjoy this more, but I agree with your points.
Upon your first reading, did you already enjoy it more than Gardens?
I had no idea what was going on. I was just like, oh man, this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. Oh, Chained Dogs. Yeah, that's awesome. But that was about the extent of it.
I think the
Okay,
next
yeah.
episode, when we talk about the book as a whole, we'll probably get more into the general questions.
Yeah. So, shall we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That concludes this episode. If you want to join the read along or discussions we're having, check us out on the Legendarium's Discord. You can find the link on thelegendarium.com. Also follow us on Twitter at GreenTeamPod. We welcome feedback. Let us know what you're enjoying or not enjoying about these discussions. Shout out to Horizon Brave for starting it all. Thank you to our panelists Ashaman, JasnahAsABoy, and BefuddledPanda. I'm Hurinfan. Until next time.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Coltrane.
Coltrane.
Going off the rails on a Coltrane train.
Jasnah and Panda, did you notice the epigraph for book 4? Did you notice something about it?